I'm so glad you found us online. My name is Eric Hayden. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service office in Newport, North Carolina. This is Winter SKYWARN. We talk all things winter. Our main goal is for you to learn how to report snow and ice to the National Weather Service. Our office covers Eastern North Carolina. Everyone is welcome to enjoy this presentation. We will point out how you can sign up to be a spotter in our office. We'll also encourage you to sign up for your local office because we know some of you might be out of the state of North Carolina when you review this. The first part of the presentation is all about the Weather Service, who we are, National Weather Service products specifically during the winter, and then we really focus on winter reporting, snow and ice measurements, where to do it, how best to do it, and how to report to the National Weather Service office. That's the main part of this presentation. We hope you enjoy that. Then, for the second part, we're going to focus on history for Eastern North Carolina. Things like nor'easters, snow and ice storms, coastal flooding. Some of our coastal flooding is most significant during our winter months, really on par to what we see with a hurricane in the summer. So we have a lot to show you. Around the 12-minute mark is when we go over snowfall measurements. And again, this presentation is for everyone, but please contact your local office so you can sign up to be an official spotter after you view this. We really appreciate you taking the time to view this video. Shouldn't last much more than an hour. We're going to go over who the Weather Service is, a little bit about some of the winter forecast products. Our main point with this whole presentation, you enjoy weather enough to watch this video. We need spotters, weather spotters, no matter where you live. So that's what we're mainly going to cover during this talk. How to report, when to report, what to report. And the focus will be winter weather reporting, but we really need year-round spotters, so keep that in mind no matter where you live across the country. Specifically for Eastern North Carolina, we're going to cover heavy snow and ice. It is a winter class, but living along the coast, nor'easters, coastal storms, those are some of our most impactful winter weather events during the seasonal months. A few important reminders, we kind of already hinted at this. Please remain active, whether this is your first SKYWARN weather spotter course you've ever taken or you've done it 100 times. Participate year-round. Report snow in the winter. Report rain throughout the year. If you get hail, high winds, report that. Locally, we have a lot of different classes. We do the basic summer one, which a lot of offices do. We do a basic winter, but also an advanced one, a flood and tropical SKYWARN to keep your interest. Bottom line, no matter where you're watching this video or when, we need your reports. Contact your local Weather Service office so you can sign up to be a spotter with them. As far as the National Weather Service is concerned, I mentioned the local office. We're in far eastern North Carolina, the Newport-Morehead City office. We have over 122 offices in the country and just under 5,000 employees. Protection of life and property, we issue those watches and warnings to protect you from severe weather, and we do that with a lot of local office support and also the national level as well. Locally, we're out of Newport, North Carolina, so if you live in the yellow shaded area, we are responsible for your forecast. So places like Kinston, Jacksonville, Williamston, you'll notice the yellow goes out into the ocean, 20 miles, nautical miles, also the local sounds and rivers. Long history here in the Newport-Morehead City office, tracing back to the Outer Banks, 1874. So we've been around a long time. We enjoy serving our community, and we are open 24/7 to serve your weather needs. I mentioned the local office here in Newport. That is going to be the presentation for our local spotters. I know since this is posted online, we may get some people outside of our forecast area. We may even get some people outside of the state. If you're not from Eastern North Carolina, it's not a problem. A lot of what we're going to show you is useful where you live. How to measure snow, how to measure ice, that's all the same. It is going to be vastly different on how you report it to your local office. The 800 number for our office is not your 800 number if you live in upstate New York. So please reach out to your local office, contact them, mention that you've taken this online training with the Morehead City office and you want to sign up to be a spotter with them. That way you get the appropriate phone numbers. If you do live in North Carolina, I posted some of our contacts for our surrounding offices. Steve down in Wilmington, Nick up in Raleigh, and Eric in Wakefield, Virginia covers Northeast North Carolina. Those folks can point you in the right direction if you live across North Carolina. If you live outside of the state, again, you're going to need to research, visit weather.gov and click on your local part of the country, and you will have some resources at the bottom of their page. Locally, just search us online, NWS Morehead City. Our website, no matter where you live, is the single best place you can get information. If it's the weather you love, it's weather.gov. So just remember weather.gov, and you can get the local forecast information for wherever you are. That includes current weather, satellite, also some specialized forecasts. Here on the coast, that includes a forecast for boating, beach weather, a river and water level forecast along the coast, and also severe weather briefings. So weather.gov, your single best place to get those forecast updates. Also mention radar and satellite and current temperature information. Here locally, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a section called a weather hazard briefing. If you click on that during periods of active weather, you will also find a PDF version of what we think is going to happen in terms of severe weather. If it's in the winter, potential winter storm. If it's in the summer, it might cover convection, summertime, hail, high winds. Hurricane season, it might be a hurricane briefing. So if you live locally, scroll to the bottom of the page, especially during periods of active weather. If you go there when the weather's quiet, it will be blank and we will not have anything there. These are some examples of what we show on our weather briefings that I just mentioned. Graphics such as these to help you plan your day. When is it going to change to snow? How much snow will we see? These are winter examples. We do the same thing for hurricane season, flooding, any high risk of severe weather across your area. We do these briefings. Since this is a Winter SKYWARN class, before we get to the reporting, how to report, what to report, when, we do want to cover some forecast so you can get the best forecast information for your area. I mentioned our website, weather.gov. You can use a QR code above and you will be sent to our winter weather page. That's where we do our snowfall forecast. This graphic that you're looking at is what we expect, what is most likely to fall. When we have a snowstorm, if you go to this page, you will see how much snow is expected. We also show some other things, a high-end snow amount. This is a good for a worst case scenario. What if the snow starts sooner? What if that low pressure system moving up the coast is closer than we think? What if it's colder than we think? This is a good way to highlight areas that may get more snow if everything lines up just right. This is on that same page, that QR code at the top, or you can visit weather.gov/moreheadcity/winter. On that same page, in addition to the most likely, what we expect, and the high end, you can look at thresholds. What's the chance of snow more than 1/10 of an inch? An inch, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, or 18 inches. As you scroll on this map, if we have snow in the forecast, it will give you a % chance that that threshold will be exceeded. Really cool way to see where we think the highest confidence is for the heaviest amounts of snow. You can quickly see it on that map. You can also view it as a table, county and city by city. Another thing on that page, the winter weather page, is the Winter Storm Severity Index. This is an index that puts all of the impacts into one. It covers impacts like snow amount, how much snow are you going to have, and how does that impact the area based on climatology. 2 inches of snow in Buffalo is a different deal than 2 inches of snow in eastern North Carolina. Wet snow, that's snow load, freezing rain or ice. So there's different attributes on this WSSI graphic. It can be viewed on the website, on our page, or you can also download it as well. We use this for public officials to really make decisions in the community when we are impacted by storms. So that's a little bit about the Weather Service, open 24/7. Have 122 offices. We're here to serve your needs. Main mission is protection of life and property. And again, this presentation is out of the Newport, Morehead City office in eastern North Carolina. SKYWARN is a program, a volunteer program run by the Weather Service to provide ground truth reports of significant weather. What does ground truth mean? It simply means what is actually happening at the ground. We can see in the sky with our radar and satellite and advanced equipment, but the human value is still highly utilized to know what is happening in your local neighborhood. And this is a great way for anybody to become involved, whether you're retired and you've always been interested in weather, you're a young person that is interested in the career of meteorology, all ages, everybody is welcome to participate in this program. These reports really help us gauge how bad a storm is, or perhaps that it's not as bad as we think. Where's the snow sticking? Is it only on the grass? Is it on the sidewalks? Are the roads bad? If it's an ice storm, are you having power outages? Are there tree issues because of the ice? The trained eye, the storm spotter, is still our greatest asset because, again, you are confirming what is actually happening in your local area. And how many times have you said, hey, it's raining in my yard, but across the street, down the road, in the next town, they didn't have anything, or vice versa. It never rains in my yard and they always get rain around me. We all know that the weather is not the same everywhere. It changes, and that's why we need your reports, and that's why spotters really help us fill in the gaps. The next couple slides are going to go over some science. This is just for your own knowledge. The most important thing for you to remember is we need your reports, but I want to show you why. Why do we need your reports? The graphic on the right is an example of our radar. The radar is at usually 0.5 degree elevation above the Earth. And since the Earth is curved, as that beam, which is denoted by the white, gets farther and farther away from the radar, it gets higher up into the sky. So in Storm A, the example of snow clouds, if something's really close to the radar, we can usually detect it a little bit better. Farther away from the radar, there's more challenges, but we also have a lot of tools in our toolbox. We have satellite and other ways to detect things, but the point of this graphic is to show you that sometimes radar can have difficulty detecting, especially snow. If it's light, flurries, maybe some drizzle, not in this neck of the woods, we don't get a lot of lake effect. Sometimes we get some sound effect snow, but up north in the Great Lakes, lake effect snow is very, very shallow, very close to the ground. So the bottom line is the radar can show us a lot, but sometimes it misses the overall intensity of light precipitation, such as snow, because the clouds are shallow. Bottom line, make your reports. You can confirm what is happening where we are. So another limitation, a lot of our observations that we get into the office do not report snow. So the map on the right, again, this talk is about Eastern North Carolina. All those codes are airport codes. PGV is Greenville, ISO is Kinston. If you've ever flown, that's what's on your itinerary, what airport you're taking off and landing at. They report weather usually 24/7, temperature, wind speed, dew point. It's awesome. But you need a human to measure the snow. And as of this recording, we have 2 observers, one in Hatteras and New Bern. So despite all of those weather observations across our area, we do not have snowfall measurements. Compare that to this map. Look at all those thumbtacks. Each thumbtack represents a spotter in our area. And again, compare and contrast that. The slide before had some dots on the map, but only 2. Only 2 report snowfall. All of these dots are humans in our area, our most recent spotters, and they report snowfall to us. So you can see where you fill in the gaps. Of course, our more rural areas, up across Washington, Hyde, mainland Dare, not as many people. We don't expect to have as many reports, but if you live in those areas, your report is even more valuable because there's less people to report to us. So your information matters. We really need your reports, and we hope that that technology slide kind of showed you and emphasized why that's the case. So the main part of the class, measuring snow, we're most concerned with the newly fallen snow. That's the storm total. We're going to go over where, what, and how to best measure the snow, some best measurement practices, and we're going to talk about how you can make other observations such as ice, also some coastal flooding here in Eastern North Carolina. Snowfall typically is more difficult than rainfall because it takes a little more time. Rainfall, there are automated gauges. Even if you go out there to measure, you usually look at the rain gauge, you measure it, you dump it out, and you come on in. With snowfall, you've got to take an average, so you're taking multiple measurements, and this information is used not just by us here in the Weather Service, but Public Works, climate, looking back at past history, other scientists, so this data is valuable. When you're talking about measuring snow, the first place you want to start is a good location. realtors say location, location, location with housing. Same thing is valid for snowfall measurement. You need a good location to measure. And this is something you want to think about today. You don't want to wait for the snowstorm to get here. You don't want to wait for the winter storm warning to be out. You want to pick a spot in your yard that's relatively open, away from tall trees, buildings, power lines, and you want to be as protected as possible to minimize drifting. So what we mean is, you want something open that you don't have trees right overhead, but maybe it's not an open field where you would have drifting. Not all sites are perfect. You do the best you can. If you live in an urban area, if you live in a rural area where it's nothing but open fields, you're going to be dealing with tall objects in the urban scenario. You're going to be dealing with blowing snow in the rural scenario. You just do the best you can, and we're going to emphasize why the best you can is important. Some of these slides are borrowed from our friends at Coco Raws. It's a great program. We will have links to that at the bottom. That is a good way to become really a year-round spotter, precipitation spotter, 365 days a year. You'll report in the morning. We'll talk about that here at the end. But these slides, I appreciate them letting us borrow these. This is an example of measuring snow under a tree, about 3 inches of snow. In the picture on the left, you can see the snow sticking to the branches and the tree itself and maybe the bird feeder, so not all of it's making it to the ground. When the gentleman moves into the middle of the yard, away from the tree, not under the tree, it's twice that amount, 6.5 inches of snow. Bottom line, don't measure under a tree. Don't measure near a building. You want to be away from those tall objects as best you can. What you can use to measure, you probably have around the house already. Rulers, measuring tape. I'm a snow lover, so yardstick, if we see that much snow, those work great. You want to measure to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. Don't always measure to whole amounts. Snow doesn't always fall as 3, 4, 5 inches. You want to take at least 2 or 3 measurements to get an average, and that will average out any drifting or any issues in your yard, and that will really help it be the most accurate measurement as possible. Here's an example, a little graphic on the right. You don't have to do long division, but you kind of get the idea. Take a couple measurements, 2 or 3, do the average, and that is what it will be. Don't do the measurement on the left. That's what I used to like to do when I was a kid. I would always measure at the end of the driveway or the biggest drift in my yard because I wanted to be able to say we had the most snow. So don't do what Eric did as a kid. Take an average, and that will be measured to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. So you use a ruler, pretty simple. Measure a few times to get the average. You want to do it away from trees. Everything, so far pretty straight. What you can measure on, this is where you can get a little fancy if you want to. Measuring in your yard is fine in the grass. I've even used a deck. As long as it's not right up against the house, that's not a problem. But you really want to measure it with a snowboard if you can, because that is a nice hard surface that will give you the most accurate measurement. If you measure in the grass, it tends to be a little bit higher because you're going down into the blades of grass versus a hard surface. So this is a snowboard. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, usually about 2 feet by 2 feet. A piece of plywood will work well. You want to paint it white so it reflects sunlight. You don't want it to be a warm surface. This will give you the most accurate reading. And the nice thing about a snowboard is it is the best surface to measure on, and then you can put it wherever it is in your yard that's the best spot. So a deck is a really good spot because it gives you that 0 value. The problem is they're attached to a house, so it might not be the best location. If you have a nice snowboard, you really combine the two. This is an example, one of our former employees in the Weather Service showing us how to measure the snow on a snowboard. You can see it's kind of a wet snow. It's sticking to the grass, maybe not on the edges. It's kind of one of those borderline events. He's got 2 snowboards out there, one for snow depth and one for new snow. But the big thing on this is make sure you mark those locations, because I can guarantee you a white snowboard and falling white snowflakes will disappear really, really quickly. So mark it. Even just a few 1/10 of an inch will make that board disappear. So be sure to mark it if you decide to use it. So how often should I measure? This is the most important next to location. At least once immediately after the snow has stopped. You're just trying to figure out and let us know how much snow fell in the most recent storm. Nearest tenth of an inch, take an average, let us know what fell. If you want to measure during the storm, that's encouraged. That can give us an update of what's happening. An example might be that you go out there and measure halfway through the storm, and then you go out and give us a final total at the end. That's fine. If you're watching from another location, this is probably more applicable there. You do not want to clear your location any more than once every 6 hours. So if you go out there and measure the snow, you can clear your location, but you don't want to do it any more than every 6 hours, because that won't give it time to compress, and you'll have an overly inflated measurement. And sometimes, you know, especially locally, if you're going to update us halfway through the event, that's not a problem, but we are working shifts here, and you're going to get different people answering the phones. So don't assume just because you called in earlier that you're talking to the same person. So just, you know, give us a running total. Hey, I'm calling for a second time. You know, we're 3/4 of the way through the event, and we're up to this amount. I'll call you with a final at the end. Just kind of be clear with what you're reporting to us. So for ice, this can be difficult. You need to report where the accumulation of ice is occurring. It is more difficult because it is dangerous, and so we want you to be safe. So here locally we say, if you just let us know that you have freezing rain, you're looking out your window and it's treacherous, just tell us that. We don't want anybody getting hurt. Just knowing that there's ice accumulating on trees or sidewalks or streets in eastern North Carolina is sufficient to call us and let us know, so that we make sure that the forecast is reflective of that. If you want to be safe and you want to measure the ice, this is an example from my yard in 2022 when we had a big ice storm here in eastern North Carolina. That's about 3/10 of an inch. This is on a crepe myrtle. They work really well. We've got a lot of those here in eastern North Carolina, and you just want to measure the thickness of the ice. If it's on both sides of the branch, you can subtract it out and average it out, but in this case it was just on the top part of the branch itself. But with ice, again, really just letting us know that it's occurring is the most important. We want you to be safe. Don't want anybody falling out there to get a specific measurement, and it's not as necessary as snowfall. So we went over where you should measure, how, things to use. Now we're going to talk about, you know, how you actually make that report. Phone calls, all caps, bolded, are preferred. And the reason why is we can ask you questions and we answer the phone 24/7. So if you let us know and there's a question we have, we can ask you right away. If you email us, we'll get to it eventually, but not as quickly as a phone call. And we want you to get in this habit because this is not as time sensitive. If we miss a snow report by a half an hour or an hour, that's not really a big deal. But a tornado, that would be a huge deal. So we want you to be a year-round spotter. And because of that, we want you to get in the habit of calling the 800 number. Again, this is only for Eastern North Carolina. If you do not live in Eastern North Carolina, this number is not for you. So if you're just watching this video, if you skipped ahead, go back to the beginning where we provided some local contacts across North Carolina. Reach out to your local office and get that number, because while you want to report snow, we don't want you calling into our office if you don't live in this area. And it's going to be the same procedure. Who are you? I'm a trained spotter in Carteret County. Where you live, what your observation is, and the time. No matter how you report, same procedure. You're a trained spotter, where you live, what you have, and the time. Email is a secondary option. Again, we view our email, but we always answer the phone when it rings. But email does give you the chance to add some images or videos. Reporting is the same way. Again, who you are, where you live, what you saw, and the time. And again, identifying yourself as a trained spotter, give yourself credit. You've taken the course, you've viewed it online, in person, however you took it, and let us know that you are a spotter with us. So when should you report? For us, it's anytime it snows. I know if you're watching from another part of the country, you're probably laughing if you get snow all the time, but it's more rare in eastern North Carolina. So anytime it snows, let us know. Looking for the snow total at the end. If you have intense snowfall rates, that would be a good thing to report during the event. So if you're getting up around an inch an hour, that's significant no matter where you are in the country. So let us know about that. And any amount of ice, again, be descriptive, stay in your warm house and tell us it's accumulating on the trees, sidewalk, streets, branches, what have you, and that will be very, very helpful. You can report online. The website I mentioned, weather.gov/Morehead City. If you scroll to the bottom, there's something that's called Submit Storm Report. You can do it that way. Again, you can report throughout the year using that form, but much like email, if it's time sensitive and it's a tornado, we want you to call right away and let us know that it's happening. We don't want to have to rely on the online report coming in and missing a few minutes of crucial time. As always, identify yourself as a spotter. You can put that in the notes or comments section as well. You can make reports on social media. For social media, we're NWS Morehead City. And you can report that way. It would not be advised. We would prefer you to call us, but if you want to do it that way, we understand. But really make sure you identify yourself as a spotter. It's going to be a more credible report if you do that before you just put in your city and the amount and the time of observation. I mentioned a few slides ago, there's a really good program called CocoRaws. If you are a weather enthusiast, you can't get enough of the weather. You already have a weather station, you're already watching the weather, or you're a young person and you just really love the weather. I highly encourage you to sign up for this program. On the website, you'll find training. You will also find a way to buy a rain gauge. On the right, you'll see purchase an official 4-inch rain gauge. It's advised you do that because that's the most accurate rain gauge versus like a tipping bucket or digital or automated rain gauge. Each day you will report between 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning. Most of the time it's going to be 0. When you get precipitation, whether it's rain or snow, you will report that. I highly recommend the app. It makes it really simple to report, but you can do it online on your computer or laptop. That's not a problem at all. If you are reporting this way, you don't need to call us at the office. We're already getting that data each morning. The only asterisk I put was, let's say you're getting like really crazy snowfall rates late evening. We won't know about it until the next morning if you do it through CocoRaws. So continue to do it that way, but also give us a buzz if there's anything unusual. And yes, that is my CocoRaws rain gauge. Also in 2022 during that ice storm. So we got a lot of ice here in Eastern North Carolina for sure. So just a summary, we're most concerned with newly falling snow. Again, at the end of the event, once it stops, measure to give us a storm total. Measure snow using an average. Ice reports are helpful. Calling our 800 number is the best way to report, especially year-round. If it's time sensitive, we want to know about it right away, and we really encourage you to become a year-round spotter or join CocoRaws if you're interested. If you're really into the weather, it's a really neat program to be a part of. We're just about to wrap up here. At the beginning, I mentioned we would really like you to become a year-round spotter. The traditional SKYWARN program was spring, early summer, high winds, tornadoes, hail, flooding. We still do those, but the reality of you seeing that specifically at your location is low. The reality of you seeing rain, obviously very high, and even snow, decently high. So we've come up with a year-round concept so that you're always in the program, you're always able to report. So if you get that high-end severe weather like a tornado or large hail, you call into the office right away. Visit our website. That's the single best way to get information on our updated classes. We do these in person. We also do them online, and we record it like the one you're watching right now, and you can watch it on YouTube. You're going to register your email with us so you get class announcements. That's the best way to stay in contact with us. And again, our goal is really that you report year-round to us. You are at the end of our winter SKYWARN presentation. We still have more to cover, but if you're interested in reporting snow and ice and you just wanted to become a spotter, you are all set. Again, if you live at the local area across eastern North Carolina, just shoot me an email. My name is Eric Hayden. You have got the email on the bottom right, eric.hayden@noaa.gov. If you live outside the area, we provided some of those contacts. If you have any questions, if you're out of state, just send me an email and I'll try to refer you to the local office. That is how you would sign up. So you're done as far as the spotter class goes. If you're interested in signing up, please contact your local office. If it's me, send me an email and we will get you signed up. Now, I mentioned we're not completely done. That's the spotter part of the talk. We have a lot more information on local storms. We're going to talk about the 1980 storm. We're going to talk about some historic nor'easters we've had in our area and also ice storms. So stay tuned for that. Okay, now that you're an official weather spotter for winter weather, the question is, do we actually get winter weather across eastern North Carolina? And that answer is yes, yes, yes. Certainly we get snow and ice, but also want to talk about coastal storms and flooding. Some of our nor'easters can produce pretty big impacts to our area on par with what a hurricane would produce during the summer. We're going to talk about cold outbreaks, a little bit about preparedness, and also winds that can occur with some of those storms. Some of the images, the lower left, from some snow across the Outer Banks in 2018, coastal flooding in the Morehead City area, and that's our ice storm from 2022. That picture is from here at the local office. First things first, winter preparedness. We're going to go over a few of the hazards we get. First is cold. No matter what happens in the winter, even if it's a mild winter, we usually have at least a handful of cold days. And you want to dress appropriately for that cold weather. A lot of us here in eastern North Carolina, just a jacket, perhaps a hat or gloves if we have one of those especially cold mornings. That usually is sufficient. Occasionally we can get extreme cold. Perhaps you travel out of state. This would definitely be something you want to pay attention to. It's all about layering. Extra jackets, extra layers of long sleeves, and then covering the extremities. So boots, mittens, gloves, and a warm hat will be a good thing. And again, you might say, hey, we don't get cold weather a lot here in North Carolina. That's not necessarily true, but keep this in mind if you're traveling. Throw some extra clothes in the car. If you break down, cold weather can be an issue. A lot of us can deal with snow, but each year we do lose people to exposure. It's a big deal if you lose your heat in the winter or if you break down on the side of the road and you are not properly dressed. Speaking of driving, we cannot control the weather, but you usually can plan around it, especially if you're willing to leave a day earlier, a day later, 6 hours earlier, 6 hours later. The first thing you want to do before you're headed out during the winter is check the official forecast from the National Weather Service. I mentioned in the beginning, if it's the weather you love, it's weather.gov. Check out that forecast. By delaying your trip, arriving earlier, perhaps later, a lot of times you can get around the storm itself. You want to be abreast of road conditions. You want to have that information on your phone, so if you're traveling, if it changes, especially if you're traveling with somebody, they can keep you updated on those changing conditions. If you're headed to the mountains, Boone, Asheville, we live in a fantastic state. We've got the beach and the mountains. Make sure your car is ready to handle it. Make sure that you have good tread on your tires. That's especially important if you're driving in snow or ice. If you're traveling to a colder climate, throw those hats and gloves, jackets, extra layers we just mentioned in the car. You may not need them to go from your car to a warm house. You may need them if you break down on the side of the road. So doing those extra things, making sure your fluids are topped off, your tire tread is good, warm clothes in the car, that will save you if you get stranded on the side of the road. Along with those lines, emergency kit, always a good idea. I like to make sure my family at least has jumper cables. The colder weather is a stressor on the battery. And again, warm clothes in the vehicle. If you're traveling to a snowy location, would not hurt to have a small shovel in case you get stuck. That will help you get out. Winter preparedness is also important at home. The big thing at home a way to stay warm and out of the elements. Think about secondary heat sources. What would you do if you didn't have power? Do you have a fireplace? If you have a fireplace that needs propane, is it filled up? Is it ready to go? Does your fireplace rely on electricity to start? Then it's not going to work if the power goes out. So try to think about those secondary sources of heat if the power is out. We really want to minimize time outdoors. Don't forget about your neighbors, especially the elderly, your pets. Don't want to leave them outside in extreme cold. Keep them as warm as possible. Bottom line, people, pets want to be inside. Minimize time outdoors as much as possible. Around here, you want to do some winterization, perhaps insulating your pipes, certainly priming your pump. If you've got one of those shallow well pumps, you want to winterize it before the cold hits. And if you're a big gardener like myself, if you've got any annuals or any tender plants, I know some of us have tropical hibiscus and plants like that, want to bring those in anytime it gets cold so that they do not die during those extreme events during the wintertime. So we talked a little bit about preparedness. Now we're going to go into some science on why we get winter storms and how they form. Picture on the right, beautiful recipe that's about to happen. We got, looks like a little cinnamon, we've got some butter and flour, a whisk and some milk. Mother Nature is a recipe. If everything comes together perfectly, not only in amount, but also timing, you get certain types of weather, whether it's an ice storm, snowstorm, blizzard, a nor'easter. If you're missing the eggs, if you're missing the butter, your recipe at home is not going to turn out. Same thing in the environment. So for a winter storm, we need cold air, you need moisture, and you need rising air, and we'll call that lift. If you're missing any of those things, or perhaps it's lacking and you don't have enough, that recipe is just not going to turn out. The same thing for weather. First source of ingredient, you have to be cold. If you want snow or ice, it's got to be cold. And this is usually our lacking ingredient. Temperatures in the 50s don't support snow. So if you're a snow lover, you want it below freezing. We're usually looking at a big area of high pressure to our north, and that will funnel in cold air out of Canada. Winds flow clockwise around an area of high pressure. So this will bring us a northwest, northeast wind, some Arctic or colder region origin to bring that cold air into our area. Sometimes this cold air can dam up against the mountains and lock in, and this can produce ice storms, but again, usually some type of northerly wind to bring that cold air in. One thing that we usually have, that is moisture. We're close to the ocean. We are certainly close to the Gulf Stream. That can be bring some warmth and moisture in our area, and occasionally storms that come out of the Gulf of Mexico with any type of southwest wind, our air is coming directly from the Gulf of Mexico. So we have plenty of moisture. This is usually not a lacking ingredient. The question is, will the moisture be here when it's cold enough to snow or have ice? The last ingredient we're looking for is really that acting agent. It would be like yeast in your bread recipe. It's something that puts everything together, gathers up the cold air, the moisture, and really gets things going, and that's a source of lift. It could be a strong area of low pressure. It could be a cold front. The bottom is a kind of an animation showing that cold, dense air going in. It forces the air to rise. Warm air riding up over cold air at the surface in the form of a warm front, that's causing rising air. So a source of lift is rising air. Cold fronts, warm fronts, areas of low pressure cause the air to rise. Also, some orographic effects. The example on the lower right, we don't have mountains in eastern North Carolina, but we're not far from Boone or Blowing Rock. Those areas get precipitation more frequently on the western side of the mountain because of that orographic lift. What happens is the air collides with the mountain, it's forced to rise up, it precipitates. If it's cold enough, it's in the form of snow. Another type is lake effect snow. Very, very cold air over the relatively warm waters of the Great Lakes actually causes the air to rise, picks up moisture off the lakes, deposits it downstream as rain early in the season and snow as it gets into the heart of winter. We don't have true lake effect snow down our way, but we can get streamers of clouds flurries and occasionally snow showers off the Chesapeake Bay down into the northern Outer Banks, and we can also see it off the Pamlico Sound. It's a little more rare there, but pretty much each year we at least get some cloud bands on a perfect north-northwest wind down the length of the Chesapeake Bay into parts of the Outer Banks. One of the big weather hazards we get when everything comes together is a nor'easter. That's a strong area of low pressure. It develops along the coast. Mariners knew about this long time ago before weather satellites and radar. Winds would start to pick up out of the northeast. They would back into the northeast as this occurred. This can, depending on the track, can bring some big snows to not only our area, but the bigger cities of the Northeast, D.C., Philly, Boston, New York. It's all about the storm track. If it's too far out to sea, we don't see the moisture and we don't see anything. If it's right along the coast, it's close enough to bring us moisture, but also allow the cold air to stay in place. That's when we get our big snowstorms. And if it's too far inland, we are warm and we might be dealing with thunderstorms instead. The example on the left is from 2007. It's late in the year. This is a nor'easter up in the northeast, but it just shows you on satellite those higher cloud tops. The bright colors are the taller clouds, and it looks almost like a hurricane. It's kind of a winter hurricane for us and people along the East Coast. Not only does it bring snow, potentially if it's cold enough, but heavy rain and gusty winds and also coastal flooding. Some examples of nor'easters in our area: January 20th, 2018, the early part. You can see the area of low pressure off the coastline. For us to get snow in eastern North Carolina, the storm track, like a lot of folks on the East Coast, has got to be perfect. Notice how that storm is more than 100 miles off the coast. If it's any farther off the coast and we don't see any precipitation, if it's right along the coast or it takes a track up I-95 near Raleigh, we're on the warm side of the system. You want to be on that northwest side of an area of low pressure. That gives you the best of both worlds if you love snow. You're on the cold side, so it's cold enough, but you're close enough for the moisture. And that was the case in early January 2018. We had a couple inches along the coast, but as much as 5, 6, 7 inches farther inland. And again, that was the first couple days of January 2018. Often, when these storms develop along the coast, if they take a good track, it's cold enough to snow, and then behind it, it pulls in even colder air. This is some of the coldest air we've had in a long time across our area. We had temperatures in the single digits all the way down to the coast, and we were below freezing for a couple mornings farther inland, places like Greenville and Washington. We were so cold for so long that some of our sounds and local rivers and creeks started to freeze. Again, if you're just watching this, you're new to the area, and eastern North Carolina, this is only happens a handful of times in our recorded history. The Pamlico River to the left, Taylor's Creek to the right in Beaufort, freezing over. Really impressive. This is one of the most impressive things I've seen in my career. Grew up in Maryland, went to school in upstate New York. I'm well versed in winter weather, but to see this snow stick on the ground and for the sounds to freeze over, very impressive. This is a satellite image. Everything you see in white over the land is snow cover, but notice the southern part of the Albemarle Sound, the Alligator River, the edges of the Pamlico Sound, especially toward the Outer Banks, Roanoke, Croatan Sound, some of those smaller bodies of water. They had ice on them in early January 2018. Pretty impressive storm. We're going to turn the clock back and go to 2011. January 22nd. Again, I want to focus on the storm track. There's our high pressure to the north that's providing us with the cold air. Again, low pressure more than 100 miles off the coast. If it's right up the coast or even inland, we're going to be too warm in our area. It has got to be an off the coast track. Not too far that we don't see the moisture, but close enough that we're on that northwest shield. This is a really good track. Right along the coast, 6, 7, almost 7.5 inches of snow. Again, if you haven't lived in eastern North Carolina for a while, you might be surprised that we get these snow amounts, but they happen that third week in January 2011. You might notice a theme. Statistically, January is our month for snow, most frequent snows. Usually about that third week of January is when we've seen it. 2003, January 23rd, 2 to 4 inches inland, but look at that, 4 to 8 almost 10 inches on Ocracoke of snow 2003, and you'll see we put on there 3 to 4 foot drifts. So usually when we get snow, if it's with a good nor'easter, there's other attributes to the storm, including wind that can produce blowing snow. It can also produce dangerously cold wind chill values that morning below zero across a good part of eastern North Carolina. So very impressive snow in 2003. The one that a lot of folks remember, the Christmas storm. It didn't happen on Christmas, but the snow was still on the ground. What a Christmas present the kids got back in 1989. Happened December 22nd through 23rd, and the snow lingered onto the ground at least in 1989. It was a white Christmas, 4 to 8 inches of snow inland, but look at that white shading. Onslow County, places like Richlands, Jacksonville, Swansboro, over towards Stella, Cape Carteret, Emerald Isle, Newport, Morehead City, 16 to 17 inches of snow. That's not me misspeaking. That's not snow drifts. That's actual amounts. We're talking over a foot, Ocracoke, Hatteras Island, up to near Nag's Head. So very impressive event, Christmas 1989. If you've been a local, you certainly know this. Send me an email, put a comment on the comments here on YouTube. What was it like for that storm? These are some pictures in Carteret County. Bogue, the western part of Carteret County. I mean, that looks like it could be upstate New York. Buffalo, could be Detroit, the UP of Michigan. That is some impressive amounts of snow. You can see it on the roof in the car. So I'm a snow lover. I hope we have that again while I'm still here, because that would be crazy to see in our area. The biggest storm on recorded history that we've had, if you've lived here for a while, certainly want to hear from you on this one. March 1980, a March snowstorm. Folks were out of school for a while with this one. Again, a foot plus over most of the area. Greenville 16, 12 inches in near Kinston, and those were on the lower amounts, 20 to 30 inches of snow. Onslow County, Carteret, Craven, places like Havelock, Newport, Cape Carteret, looks like the bullseye, Emerald Isle, Stella, the towns I just mentioned, Swansboro, Maysville, Jacksonville, Richlands, those areas, 20 to 30 inches of snow with that storm in 1980. Very, very impressive stuff. So doesn't happen every year. Usually every year we have at least some flurries or snow showers. Every 2 to 5 years we have a decent accumulating snow, and then usually each decade we get a whopper across eastern North Carolina. And these are some pictures, 1980 storm. I think this is from one of our retirees. This is in Beaufort. You can see the snow and also the classic pine trees on either side of that. Thus far, we've primarily talked about snow and heavy snow, drifting snow, but we do get other types of precipitation during the winter, specifically ice. So we wanted to go over this graphic and why different forms of ice happen. If you have temperatures near or below freezing from where the clouds are, all the way down to near the ground, on the far left, you can see the example is snow. However, if you have some warmer weather higher up in the atmosphere and that snowflake falls and it melts into a raindrop, then it has time to refreeze before it hits the ground. We call this sleet. You can see that on the middle to the left center part of the graphic on your right. Farther to the right, you can see if a snowflake starts to fall through the atmosphere and encounters an area that is above 32 degrees, it melts into a raindrop, and then it does not freeze until it reaches the ground itself, whether that's power lines, cars, sidewalks, or trees. We call this freezing rain. Then on the far right, snowflake high up in the atmosphere enters an area above the surface that's above freezing, never has a chance to refreeze. We call that rain. So we can get different types of precipitation during the winter. The most dangerous type can be freezing rain because it accumulates on power lines, trees, roadways, not only causing power outages, but making travel extremely slippery. We don't get this super often, but I put this in here. It can happen on occasion, something called grapple. Looks like tiny little white dots. It's when snowflakes bump into raindrops. Raindrop turns the snowflake into those tiny snowballs or snow pellets. This is different than hail or sleet because it is snow. So those are just some of the types of precipitation we can get during the winter. We mentioned one of the most dangerous types is freezing rain because it can really stick to everything. It's rain that's falling, but it does not freeze until it makes contact with the ground, whether that's the roadway, power lines, or cars, and this can cause life safety issues due to lack of heat during periods of cold weather, extremely hazardous on the roads. It's hard to drive in the snow, but you do have some grip. You really can't drive on an ice-covered road, extremely dangerous travel for that. So freezing rain is one of our biggest concerns in terms of impact to the community. Luckily, we don't get ice storms as frequently, but we can get them. This is an example in January of 2022. You can see the map on the right showing some of the highest ice totals. The picture on the left is from our building. You can see the accretion there. We had close to a ½ inch of ice at the office itself. So places like Jacksonville, even Sneads Ferry, Richlands, inland parts of Onslow County, through Carteret County, saw 1/4 to almost ½ inch of ice. Significant, especially across eastern North Carolina, to see that much ice really any winter in our area. These are more pictures. You can see, I mentioned at the office itself had about a ½ inch of ice. That's what it looked like, really encasing the trees. We were fortunate with our recent hurricanes. A lot of the trees had already been trimmed and taken down and cleaned out. So we didn't have widespread power outages. We did have some, but you can see a copious amount of ice across the trees in our parking lot, around the building itself, and you can see them near the building. On the lower right is just a measurement of the ice, about 3/10 of an inch. That's in the western part of the county over toward Cape Carteret. So impressive ice storm in our area, January 2022. Everything we've talked about at this point has been snow or ice. That's kind of what you think of when you think about winter storms. But I do want to focus you on what else can happen here in our community, especially along our coast. Coastal storms can be quite impactful. These areas of low pressure that form near or along the Gulf Stream can really be intense with wind, rain, and also coastal flooding. And those impacts can be as impactful as any snow or ice storm. This is some imagery the last couple of years in the Outer Banks. I think this is near Rodanthe, near the junk handle. So Highway 12 can be impacted for sure. This is December 23rd, 2022. You can see the causeway. This is a Roanoke Sound. So as you're going over the bridge into Nags Head, that last little stretch over the Roanoke Sound, water crashing up and over the breakwater wall right there. So impressive amounts of high water in some areas, and as the graph shows on the top, it can also be low water in other areas. Our sounds are very shallow, or relatively speaking, so the water can push them all one direction, and the other end of the sound will experience low water. That happened the Pamlico River at Washington. Evening of the 23rd, we had extreme low water values, and then the water sloshed back and we went above normal. So again, we can get both high and low water events because of the coastal flooding on our sounds. In addition to the coastal flooding, another example, January 2018, you can see Avon, Highway 12, but we also get wind. So yes, it's coastal flooding, it could be snow or rain, but at least tropical storm force winds, pretty common in these storms. So you're talking well into the 50s in this example to near 70 miles per hour. Remember, 74 is hurricane force winds. So nothing to sneeze at in terms of strong winds with any of these coastal systems during the wintertime. Here's another example of, again, the water can cause flooding, but also navigational issues with our ferry system. This is the March 2018 storm with all the water blowing toward the eastern end of the sound. The western end of the sound, the Pamlico River, on the western part of the Pamlico Sound itself, low water. You can see those sailboats aground or on the sandbars, and you can see the graph on the left showing that the water was extremely low or negative in terms of dry conditions on the riverbed itself. So that is it for our SKYWARN class. Appreciate if you joined us for the first part, what was all about snow measurement, when, how to make those observations. If you stuck around for the history, if you've lived in the area for a while, be curious to see any comments. If you have anything more to add, if you've been through some of those storms in March 1980, maybe the Christmas storm in '89, curious to hear what your experience was. We mentioned this before at the end of the spotter part of the course. We do these classes throughout the year, so if you're just kind of viewing this video halfway through, look for more courses throughout the year, both in person and online. Best way to get that information is our website, weather.gov/MHX, and then you click on SKYWARN at the bottom. And we've mentioned this in about the halfway point. Shoot me an email. My name is Eric Hayden at NOAA.gov. to get you signed up. Once you view this video, you qualify as a trained spotter, so just shoot me an email. We will get you signed up. If you do not live in Eastern North Carolina, I will happily connect you with your local office. As always, appreciate the feedback. And your biggest compliment is to share our information. So if you have other people that you think might be interested in becoming a spotter or just learning a little bit more about the history of winter weather across Eastern North Carolina, please share this with them. Have a great day, everyone.